So, per usual, for those who don't know, uh, I'm Hunter, one of the community managers over here at Arbitrum slash Offchain Labs, uh, and of course back with another AMA. And today we're speaking with the Umbria team, uh, more specifically Dev Barnyard and Dev Oski of Umbria, co-leaders, co-lead founders, I should say, as well as devs of Umbria Network generally. How's it going, guys?
Really good. It's excellent to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. For those who don't know, yeah, Umbria Network is a cross chain bridge, and I think these conversations always turn into a really interesting stuff. Before we actually get into any part of the relevant AMA, I have a note here that says you guys are happen to be like twin brothers or something. Is that true?
Yeah. So we're identical twin brothers ever since we were born.
What? That's insane. I mean, I know we're not going to be able to see it because it's a space, but yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there. That's pretty cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah, it's
works
good.
out when both of us are programmers. We've been programming together since we were about 14, 15 years old. And, we never really took a break from programming together. So it's just been, 15 years of getting to know each other on the, development side of things. So we're very in sync with our development structure and we can read each other's code quite easily. So it works out really well.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have like a genetically identical brain to look at your code and make sure you're not making any mistakes.
That's insane. I have a fraternal twin. We're nothing alike though, so that's pretty cool that that you guys are the twin brothers. Um, anyways, into the actual AMA. Thank you for entertaining that. So, just for those in the crowd who aren't familiar, can you give like a brief overview of what Umbria Network is, and maybe just how you guys came to start it and really what inspired you to make the protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what Umbria is it's a suite of technologies that are DeFi centric, but the most popular part of our ecosystem is the Umbria Nani bridge. And what that is it's a cross chain bridge which facilitates the movement of assets between different EVM compatible blockchains. So that would be like Ethereum, Arbitrum, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, and all the other popular EVM based chains. And we offer like a bespoke architecture of bridging that is different than any other bridging solution out there. And we've managed to make the cost of bridging incredibly cheap, and particularly cheap between Ethereum and Arbitrum Ethereum and Polygon Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain. And the reason we built this technology is because originally we were going to build a DEX on Polygon back in like 2019 when QuickSwap wasn't there and there was no good DEX on any layer 2 blockchains that could take advantage of the really fast speeds and cheap price of these new technologies. But what we quickly realized is it's all well and good having a super cheap and super fast DEX on one of these blockchains. But if users can't get from Ethereum to that blockchain cheaply and quickly, there's not really going to be any adoption because people actually won't be able to get there to take advantage of this technology. So instead of focusing all of our efforts on building like an amazing DEX, we decided to build a cross-chain bridge and essentially become like the best and cheapest cross-chain bridging platform out there.
If I may ask, like, what's like the difference between like a cross chain bridge and like just like a cross chain swapping, or is it the same thing, or is it just like kind of semantics that we're kind of talking about here?
Yeah, so there's lots of different styles of bridges. One of the, I guess you can call it bridging, is like an atomic swap style bridge, which is essentially, yeah, there's different ways of bridging, and our bridge isn't like an atomic swapping style bridge where assets are just swapped between two users in that way. The way that our bridge works is we have liquidity pools on all of these different blockchains. And then when a user wants to move their assets, let's say from Ethereum to Arbitrum, they are requesting our bridging oracle to do that bridging mechanism by essentially depositing their liquidity on the liquidity pool on our blockchain on Ethereum. And then the oracle then enables them to get the liquidity from Arbitrum's liquidity pool, and they get sent that asset by the oracle on the destination chain.
Got you. No, yeah, and I guess just I think that's just one thing that like in crypto, there's many different ways to say specific things, but it's great to have that clarity there. So
Something
I
I would
mean,
add to that, if that's all right, is that
yeah,
when people talk about cross-chain swapping, they're traditionally talking about swapping one asset for another. And so a cross-chain swap might be between ETH and USDT between two chains. But what Umbria does is basically we've just reduced the cost of bridging between, let's say, Ethereum and Arbitrum or Ethereum and Polygon, or any other EVM style chain. Our bridge has just reduced the cost and increased the speed of doing that by about a factor of 10 with our novel bridging protocol. So we don't do cross-chain swaps like, let's say, between ETH and USDC from one chain to another. We just basically facilitate the migration of liquidity of a singular asset between one, like Ethereum, one chain, and Arbitrum or Optimism, another chain. Because one of the major problems in the layer two space and within the EVM style chain space is that it's quite difficult to get your users' liquidity from Ethereum, which is basically the mothership, onto all of these different layer twos or layer ones that are basically just improvements or scaling solutions on Ethereum. So what Umbria has done is we've really reduced the barrier to entry for other EVM chains that do have other improvements compared to Ethereum, and be able to get the liquidity from Ethereum to those chains so that the community can take advantage of the advantages that those other chains offer.
totally hear from there. So I mean, just generally, I mean, like, what kind of inspired you guys to, you know, to kind of like go this route? I mean, I know you mentioned some, something along the lines of like DeFi summer and kind of last year, which frankly to me is insane. By the way, that was just last year. um, but like, yeah, I mean, it just seems that I think in in a world where there's increasingly more, I guess you could say, like competition within, frankly, any part of the crypto ecosystem. I guess it's like it'd be nice to hear kind of what you guys think stands out, or makes Umbria stand out, I should say, from the rest of its competitors.
So
But
the
when we start, you go ahead, Bon.
Okay, so yeah, the inspiration for us was really when we were building this DEX on Polygon, and we were trying to get our assets to Polygon to do things like testing and to add liquidity to our ecosystem and that kind of thing. We realized just how ridiculously slow and expensive the official solution for Ethereum to Polygon bridging was, which was the Polygon official bridge, and it was just very clear to us that. The bottleneck for all of this interoperability between blockchains is the lack of good quality bridging solutions for these blockchains. And so, for me, I felt like essentially it was a no-brainer to innovate in this particular space because there were so many innovations going on in DeFi as a whole, with things like Uniswap and SushiSwap making great dexes, Compound and Aave making interesting lending protocols. Lots of really crazy, interesting stuff going on during that period. But there was still no good bridging solution that was kind of like the glue that stuck all of these blockchains together and facilitated all of these interesting technologies being used. And so it was clear to us that that was the thing that we needed to focus on, and that was also kind of like the low-hanging fruit where we could really build something awesome that was going to be useful to potentially hundreds of thousands of people. And in the last 18 to 24 months or so, we facilitated about 250,000 transactions through the Umbria network and saved our users hundreds of thousands, maybe even $1 million worth of gas now. And so that's been really fulfilling to us, being able to see that all these transactions are way cheaper than people using other solutions that were slow and expensive. And we could really make a difference in our little niche, which is bridging between different blockchains.
You gonna speak, Barnyard? See you unmuted.
Oh, sorry. Did you, I don't know
No,
if maybe my connection's not so good. What I was saying is, can you hear me okay now?
yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I was just saying that basically for us, it was clear that there was a real gap in the market for a good blockchain bridge that facilitated the movement of assets cheaply and quickly. There was all these really awesome technologies coming around. In 2020, 2021, things like SushiSwap, Uniswap, really good for swapping assets. There was Compound and Aave, which were really good for doing things like lending. But there was nothing that enabled people to move their assets onto layer twos and take advantage of the cheap transactions that you could get there and fast transactions as well. And so for us, it felt like this was the low hanging fruit where we could innovate and make something that was much better and be super useful to everyone in the community. We had over 250,000 transactions Going through our bridges now, we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars of gas for our community, and it's been clear to see that our technology has been super useful to the community, which is people who are interested in blockchain technology, but also interested in all the new innovations in crypto, particularly all of these layer 2 blockchains or improvements on the traditional Ethereum like smart contract blockchain.
Totally here on that front. And it's funny because I think like frankly, yeah, obviously as time goes on, I think like that's becoming a little more apparent, little more apparent that like you know, DeFi, frankly, again, in our opinion, truly does belong on layer two, just with the speed and the quickness, the quickness, and I actually say the cheapness of the transactions that you get when you're using, like a chain such as Arbitrum, but also utilizing that security that comes along with being a layer two on Ethereum. That being said, and this maybe this may be a little similar to kind of what you guys stated earlier, but you know, uh, was there like anything specific or kind of like like a moment where you guys realized, hey, like we need to deploy this thing on Arbitrum or like an Arbitrum bridge, I should say.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely seemed like Arbitrum was one of the up and coming chains when we were deciding like where to deploy our bridge. And we think that the EVM chains are really the most exciting chains in the space right now. Like when we compare them to something like Solana, what we see is a huge barrier to entry for anyone who wants to develop on top of them. But if you want to, if you look at some of the EVM chains out there, all of the EVM chains out there, all of the technology is standardized. So we feel that over the next few years, the EVM chains are going to be the ones that really see the major growth and the major adoption, just because everybody is used to developing on the EVM chains. Everybody can hook up their Arbitrum address to their MetaMask and all of that kind of thing. Whereas some of the more bespoke, strange blockchains out there that have sort of novel architectures and things like that, we think that it's going to be a little bit more challenging for them to become more widely adopted compared to the EVM chains like Arbitrum, Polygon, and things like that.
One of the things that we really focused on at Umbria is making sure that the technology we're building is the technology that the community wanted us to build. So when we were building out all of our different bridges, the way that we decided which technologies we would integrate with and which blockchains we would integrate with were mainly community votes. And Arbitrum was one of those ones that the community wanted quite early on. And so that's why we decided to implement Arbitrum as part of our ecosystem quite early on as well.
Totally, yeah. And I think wait, Barnard, you're not speaking anymore. Okay, good. Just want to make sure because I've had a couple times where I spoke over someone when they weren't stopped, when they weren't done speaking. But I think that I totally hear you, and it's so funny because I think that the DeFi stack, you know, people I think kind of limited to things that only touch like that base chain, if that makes sense. Like, you know, bridges, frankly, if you ask me, are just as much, if not a huge part, to a chain's DeFi stack as much as any other protocol is. Because frankly, it's literally like the thing that's driving and giving people the ability to come in and come out of that ecosystem. Apart with any other kind of farms or whatever it is that users are allowed to kind of get involved with on said chain. So yeah, no, I definitely hear you on that one.
Yeah, for sure. If you have a technology and no one can get to the technology, then I guess in that way the technology is useless. And so that's exactly the reason that we decided to build Umbria, is because we realized that all of these layer 2 platforms and new Ethereum style platforms have very interesting technology, and people are going to really want to use it. But if they can't cheaply and quickly move their assets over to these new chains to take advantage of all this new amazing innovation in the crypto space, then it's almost as if that technology doesn't exist.
Oh, I totally hear you on that. I feel like the same thing kind of works with like I guess many different things. Like it's almost like like not having marketing for a project, but with an amazing tech, it's like, well, no one's going to find out about it if there's if no one's going to use it if no one can find out about it in the first place. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. And we feel like the more interoperable all of these chains can be, the better chance the greater technology has of taking over as being the meta technology. The way I see it is kind of like the Betamax VHS argument. Betamax was the superior technology in a lot of ways, but their marketing just was not as good as VHS at the time. And I think that as a blockchain community, if people aren't exposed and aren't able to get to the best technologies, maybe those technologies will die, and something that is not quite as good will overtake, because it's just the piece of technology that has the legacy, it's easy to use, or whatever it might be. And so at Umbria, one of the things that we really care about when we're building new bridges is figuring out which technologies we think as a community are going to be the most important technologies in the space, so that we can build a bridge that is the most useful to our community members.
100% that. 100% here. Yeah. Got you. I think moving on to the a little bit of like the protocol side of stuff. As far as I'm concerned, there is a Umbria token. Can you maybe explain how it's utilized by the protocol itself?
Sure, I can explain that. So basically, our bridge works by crowdsourcing liquidity from our community. And whenever somebody bridges one asset from one chain to another, so let's say they're bridging ETH from the Ethereum chain to Arbitrum, they have to use liquidity that's been lent to our liquidity pools. And so by doing so, they also pay a little bit of a fee when they bridge. It's a 0.3% fee from Ethereum to Arbitrum, let's say. And the liquidity providers get that fee, roughly speaking. The liquidity providers of the ETH get 0.2%, and then liquidity providers of our Umbria token get 0.1%. So that's basically like the tokenomics of our governance token, Umbria. If somebody stakes Umbria in the pool, they get a 0.1% fee of any asset that gets bridged from any network to any network as a consequence of staking in our system. And so there's a kind of a circular, a spiral upwards as liquidity grows and as the amount of volume that goes through our bridge grows, and that's kind of how we designed the Umbria system.
Yeah, and so the Umbria token itself is also a governance token. And so as a holder of Umbria, you essentially get voting rights for, as a community member, deciding the direction of the Umbria project, what bridges we should build next, and that kind of thing. One of the things that's very important to us as developers, I think, is that this bridge is community driven, and the direction of the bridge is community driven. Because at the end of the day, the success of the project is really only is only going to be how useful it is to the community. And so the community, know what they want as part of this technology, and so making sure that we know. That we maintain a direction that is community centric, and we are developing with the community in mind. That's super important to us.
I think as a member of the community, I may speak for everyone here when I ask, like in what ways can users earn yield using Umbria? Like, is it kind of one like main way, or is it like, I don't know? Do you guys have like this kind of intricate kind of system that that feeds to the degens that live on Arbitrum?
Something that's really interesting about our staking system is that it doesn't have impermanent loss like a system like Uniswap would have. Because if you want to stake in the Umbria system, you only need to stake one asset. So that might be like Ethereum or USDC or USDT, what have you. When you stake that asset and then somebody bridges that asset from one chain to another, you earn a small fee every single time somebody bridges. And so you're able to stake assets and almost immediately be earning APY on those assets, and there's no lockup period, there's no impermanent loss. You can put in as much or as little as you want and take out as much or as little as you want in any time period that you want. So the staking side of our system has been very popular just because of how flexible it is with regards to when you're staking and when you're unstaking, and also the impermanent loss sort of risk side of it has been taken away because you don't have to stake two assets at the same time.
One of the things that we really wanted to make sure of is that our staking mechanism was super simple. Because these days, you have some very exotic DeFi platforms that are, taking your assets, splitting them up into three things, lending, one thing over here, putting this one upside down over here, and all gets, very confusing and also very difficult to track, what you're earning, what your risk surface is, and all that kind of thing. And so with Umbria, it's really simple. If you stake an asset, you receive APY on that asset. Your asset is always safe. You can't get liquidated in any way like that. And there's a very simple APY ticker on our website which tells you exactly how much you're going to get per year, and it's going to be in the asset that you stake, unless you're staking Umbria, in which case you're going to be earning every single asset type that gets bridged through the system. And so it's a super simple way of earning APY on your assets, and it's also a nice way to get into DeFi if you're still very new and some of these technologies are very complicated and a bit overwhelming. Umbria is a very simple solution where you just put your assets in this one asset, and then you earn an APY in the asset that you stake.
And does this tie directly with how the protocol itself earns revenue, or do you guys have a different system for that?
Yeah, so basically, as the Umbria DAO, we just stake Umbria into the Umbria ecosystem. So we don't have any special earning privileges or anything like that. We just have like a chunk of Umbria, which as a community of developers and members of the team hold, and then we earn fees through the Umbria bridge there, and then that's basically how the system is maintained. We thought that would be like a more fair way to approach the system rather than having any like special permissions or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, we want Umbria to be completely decentralized, and as a organization, we want to be a completely decentralized organization with fully on-chain voting, and in the end case, not have any special permissions at all as developers or anyone who is moderating the system or anything like that. We want it to be like a completely 100% community oriented project. And so from the very beginning, we decided that as the developers, we're not going to have any special permissions on the system. And if we do want to get the benefit of running the Umbria network as a DAO, as a DApp, I should say, we need to hold that Umbria token ourselves and stake that into the system, and in a way put our money where our mouth is in terms of putting all of the assets, all of our Umbria that we have ourselves into the system, to kind of show that we believe that the system is secure, and also that we want it to be like a fair distribution of assets for everyone who's using the Umbria system.
It's an interesting topic, I think. Actually, kind of venturing on into the into that decentralization point. We've actually been talking about it quite a bit on some of the last couple spaces we've been running here. But um, if you can you maybe kind of speak a little bit to, I guess, like the current decentralization of the protocol, and maybe off the back of that, what steps you guys have taken to ensure the security of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll start with security. First of all of our system has been audited a couple of times and by like major auditing firms. So Certic is one example of a very reputable auditing firm that's made sure that all of our systems are nice and secure. We always try to take a security centric approach when we're developing any of the critical infrastructure at Umbria, and so far we haven't been hacked or anything like that, and we've been running now for about 2 years. So touch wood, fingers crossed that streak continues. And then in terms of decentralization, one of the things that we're really looking to finalize going forward is having a fully on-chain decentralized governance structure. And so, as the ecosystem grows and improves, it becomes more strong and robust as an ecosystem, and we can move closer towards having a fully decentralized voting ecosystem, which has 100% of the mechanism of action of the actual project run purely by smart contracts. We're not quite there yet. It's going to take a little bit more time, and we think that hopefully within the next bull run, when everything starts to get very popular again, we might be able to reach a size where we can go fully decentralized with everything. But right now, we're actually building like some new technology on the bridge that's going to make it even faster and cheaper. And so, until we've built this new version of the bridge, which will be the V2 bridge, we're still going to have some centralized controls over the ecosystem, just in case anything goes wrong in the early stages.
If you're able to, I'd love to maybe hear a little bit more about y'all's thought process behind that. It's like specifically, like, kind of the trade off between, like, like maybe waiting a little bit longer to decentralize, but because of like a potentially, let's say, game changing or protocol like needed upgrade, versus just kind of doing it now and then kind of having it have to all go through, like, more or less maybe a more bureaucratic process that decentralizing kind of brings. I just love to hear your thoughts on that, if possible. Just kind of like the y'all's thought process behind that whole thing.
I think there's two elements of centralization that are worth thinking about with regards to like a cryptocurrency project or with regards to Umbria. One of them, which the one that I think is the most important, is the decentralization of the sort of community voting structure and the stakeholders of the project, that being the community, they should have as sort of as loud of a voice as possible. And then the other side of it is the decentralization of the actual technology and sort of the caveats and um, the upsides of having either a fully decentralized system or a partially decentralized system or a fully centralized system. One of the things I was thinking about with regards to centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges is there's definitely a place in the world for Uniswap, but you might not want to do every single trade you ever do through Uniswap. And so with Umbria, the thing that we really wanted to do first and foremost is really reduce the cost of bridging to the absolute minimum, and also increase the speed of bridging to the absolute maximum. And for that to happen, the first version of Umbria does have centralized aspects within its technology, but what we're really sort of focusing on, what we're really caring about at the end of the day, is decentralizing the governance layer and the sort of community layer, so that everyone can be involved in the direction of the process of the project and feel like they're being involved in the direction of the project. And so full decentralization with regards to bridging is not the best solution for people who just want to bridge their assets as quickly and as cheaply as possible. In the same way as a lot of people want to use Binance and Coinbase rather than Uniswap. So I think we would at Umbria split the idea of decentralization out into two parts, and the most important part to us is having that sort of community decentralization, and also having centralized aspects of our bridge to sort of maintain that kind of security idea as well as not having a bridge that's just as slow and just as expensive as everybody else.
One of the things I always think about when I look at the trade-offs between centralization and decentralization is there is security dangers and risks in both systems. So, for example, in centralized systems, a great example of one of the risks there is the big FTX implosion that we saw just maybe a few weeks ago, where one of the risks of giving up your access to your tokens to a custodian like FTX, you're risking them not making the right decisions or being malicious and then losing your keys. So that's like the centralized security risks that you face. But there's also decentralized security risks that you can face. For example, having a bug in your smart contract and then someone coming in and draining the smart contract or something like that, or just introducing bugs into your smart contract, or accidentally locking up your funds in a contract that's faulty or something like that. And so at Umbria, one of the things that we try to maintain is walking that fine line between mitigating the security vulnerabilities of both architectures, whether it be having permissions in a centralized way, or writing a smart contract that might have a bug in it that could be attacked by a clever hacker or something like that. I think there's definitely pros and cons to both sides, and I think it's often a mistake to go either fully decentralized from the beginning or fully centralized in the end case. And it's always about trying to walk a fine line where you can, try to get the best of both worlds and not compromise on either two systems.
No, I totally hear you there, and I truly think that's part of what makes this space so unique and so interesting. That like you know, frankly, we're all more or less just regular people having to make these really important decisions that at the end of the day will have an impact on the entire outcome of the project generally. So I definitely appreciate that feedback there. I think actually, maybe more on that note, kind of speaking a little bit more towards the team generally. Like, how big is your team behind the project? Is it literally just you guys, like the twins? Are there any key advisors that you guys can maybe speak of? Or
Yeah, so in the beginning, it really was just the twins coding in the basement. But as we've grown, we've had more people come onto the team. We've got quite a lot of community members who are building interesting technologies around Umbria as well, which is super exciting. So we have community members who have built really interesting dashboards and analytic frameworks and that kind of thing. And it's been really great to see that as we've tried to maintain a very community oriented development process and organization and technology in general, that's really encouraged some of the open source guys to come in and build technology surrounding Umbria as well. And we also have a lot of partnerships with other organizations in the space, and we've had to do a lot of building with them as well, which has been very exciting. I think we have somewhere in the region of like 50 to 75 partners who have implemented the Umbria bridge natively in their own technologies, whether it be implementing our widget into their ecosystem or using our API to integrate on a coding level the Umbria bridge so that they can do aggregation of dexes or aggregate our bridge into their bridge aggregation system and things like that.
Great to hear. And yeah, just based off you were saying there, it sounds like you guys have quite a number of things kind of coming down roadmap slash pipeline. Can you maybe give us an idea of like what you guys have planned out for the next couple, months to a year, and maybe we can kind of just chop off things through there.
Sure. Ultimately, what Umbria is trying to do is create a sort of interoperability layer between all of the popular blockchains that people want to move assets between. So, over the next few months, one of the major things on the Umbria roadmap is having our bridge go between any of the networks that we currently support. So, right now, the Umbria bridge only supports Ethereum 2 layer twos or Ethereum 2, like Ethereum style chains. But what we really want to see is like Avalanche to Arbitrum or Optimism to Polygon our system. So the Umbria team is about halfway through building that system, and that system will be coming within the next 3 to 6 months, I imagine. But really, the core focus of Umbria is just to make the interoperability between all of these EVM chains as heightened as possible, with in mind the needs of the community, which is the cheapest possible bridging and also the fastest possible bridging.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a big game changer there. Is there like like if you can get into it, like what's like the technical requirement for that? And you don't have to start spitting out like Solidity code, but like like what technically needs to happen to the current iteration of the bridge to make that happen?
Yeah, basically an entire overhaul of the entire system. And so the way that our infrastructure works right now is completely different than the way it's going to look in our next version. And so we're currently, deep into the code right now, trying to implement everything not from scratch, but build our entirely new architecture. And we're hoping to have that basically available in late January, something like that. And we're very, very excited about it because it's going to really increase. It's going to reduce the cost of bridging between layer two blockchains or non-Ethereum blockchains by a lot, probably a factor of 10 again.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I think while I am community managing, I do always find like this type of stuff fascinating because I think from like a user perspective, it always just looks like okay, well if you want to go from one place to another, you just I don't know like plug in an API somewhere and it just happens. But in reality, it's a lot more complicated than that. I
And that's
think
one of the great
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
that's one of the great things about all of these communities that we're connecting is that, for example, Arbitrum is going to they have like a really great community of really like wizard level developers. And so as we as a network, as Umbria, move further out into the ecosystem and integrate all of these chains into our system, we're meeting and able to collaborate with some really clever guys, really awesome Solidity smart contract developers, really awesome Web2 developers. And it's great just to see, how great the community is on Arbitrum and also on all of these other chains, and how the mindset of developers, particularly in cryptocurrency, is always collaborative and open source, and that's something that's been a real joy working at Umbria, is being able to develop with all of these like really amazing developers.
Yeah, totally. Frankly, you guys are just going to be kind of joining that pool and just making it larger. So truly happy to have you guys coming aboard. Is there anything else in terms of like maybe like a non-technical perspective? Maybe you want to share. Like I think you'd mentioned earlier something about like a widget, um, and maybe I think you guys had a referral program too. Last I checked. I don't know if you want to talk about any of that stuff.
Yeah, so basically, Umbria's created a widget so that DeFi platforms and NFT platforms can bring bridging to their community in a native way and not have to redirect their community to an unfamiliar website like the Umbria website. So this widget is just an iframe that many projects have integrated into their front page or their minting page or what have you, so that the community can just come straight to the page, know exactly what they're doing, everything feels familiar, and bridging really becomes part of like the native process of those different projects. So that's the point of the widget. Something that's attached to the widget is the referral program. So if any NFT platform or any DeFi platform integrate the Umbria widget, they get a percentage fee from the bridging process. So it's like an independent revenue stream that they're able to add to their website and add to their flow, really for no cost whatsoever, very low development cost. It's literally just as simple as putting one HTML tag, an iframe tag, into their code. So it takes like 5 minutes, and then every time anyone bridges using their widget on their website, it hits their referral code, and they get a small percentage fee as well. So it's been really beneficial for some of the sort of smaller projects that don't have a great deal of funding. It's been like a completely independent revenue stream for them. So it's just another thing that's able to strengthen their project, both from the community side, getting people onto the chain that they need to be as quickly and easily as possible, but also that revenue stream side of it as well. So it's kind of a bonus in both ways for these projects.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that stuff, and it's funny because I think things like that, um, you know, there's definitely different schools of thought with like when you're approaching things like that, especially I think in the crypto space. But I do think that like having these kind of strategic moves to make sure that like obviously your protocol is growing, but also the protocol that you're supporting is growing as well is really key. And like it's the kind of the same stance I think that we take over here. Again, at Off-Chain Labs building Arbitrum, that like like we don't like frankly like when we think of marketing, we don't think of marketing Arbitrum. We think of marketing ecosystem partners, right? Again, Umbria being like great example. Uh, so like the growth of Arbitrum relies very heavily on the ecosystem versus just us marketing alone. I mean, frankly, you see an Arbitrum ad like out in the street or on a train, like you're gonna look at it like, what the hell is that? It's like seeing like an IBM ad or something. Whereas like the apps and I guess it goes back to what you were saying, that like these different connections, obviously they can be made in different ways. I think is key for growth generally in the entire ecosystem. So I love y'all's approach on that. I guess is kind of what I'm saying there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally.
just on a personal level, like the Web3 space, with it, most of it being open source, is sort of changing the mindset from everyone competing against each other to everybody collaborating with each other. And I think that shift in mindset has been something that has really lent itself to this lent success to a lot of projects that if they were just operating in their own silo, I don't think they would have been as successful as quickly. It definitely has a lot of advantages to invite that level of collaboration with everybody. Like on the smart contract level, for example, Open Zeppelin has a whole bunch of smart contracts that you can just build stuff from that have been audited by countless hundreds of people. So you can be pretty sure that they're going to be pretty robust. And I think that mindset goes across the whole Web3 space, and it's just been a really important factor for adoption and collaboration.
I feel like there's so much innovation and so much potential still in the blockchain space because it's so new that all of these organizations, like you at Arbitrum, like us at Umbria, we all benefit from helping each other right now. And the level of competition out there um, doesn't really it doesn't look like a different sector where people are trying to kill each other just to make a buck. At In the cryptocurrency space, there's still so much room for people to develop interesting new things that are going to be low hanging fruit that help the ecosystem. So whether that be bridging, whether it be making a cheap DEX, building a new blockchain that is innovating in some special way. That's all really helpful for all the peripheral technologies that might be able to use that as well. And that's something that's really great about blockchain and Web3 is that a lot of the times we don't have to compete. We just have to build together, and then we can all together build something awesome.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with both points there. Um, I think before, by the way, throwing it to questions from maybe some people in the chat. I guess just generally, like, what do you guys see as maybe the? I mean, I don't know. This is I mean, like, obviously every year in crypto there are different types of kind of, I guess you could say, trends, different types of kind of things, kind of like popping off. I'd also say, what would you say 2023 might bring in terms of like, I don't know, crypto Web3 trends?
One of the things that I think is being explored more now than it has been ever is decentralized regulation and KYC on the blockchain. One of the things that ENS did when they made their namespace and allowed people to have, a word and then .eth as their address, they've kind of allowed people that are using cryptocurrency to say, well, this address belongs to me. And it's a way to verify themselves in like a very primitive kind of way. I think people have really responded well to that. And I think they do like having that kind of thing connected to their wallet. And in a similar way, that's kind of like what NFT profile pictures do, like the Bored Apes, like CryptoPunks. It kind of gives you an identity in this space that wasn't possible before. And I think that that is going to continue to move in that direction. I think that being able to provide your identity in the real world on your crypto wallet, whether it be an NFT, which proves some kind of KYC requirement that you've done, would be is going to be a technology that becomes more and more useful as regulation becomes more heavy in the space. And so that's what I'm really looking at 2022, 2023, looking at the people that are building interesting regulatory frameworks in crypto, but also interesting technologies that enable you to identify yourself in the space.
Yeah, just adding onto that, I think the next sort of generation of technologies are really going to be dependent on the regulatory approach of all of the different major governments who are either, quite relaxed about crypto or really freaking out about crypto. And so I always think back to sort of 10 or so years ago when we had the SOPA and PIPA Internet Privacy Acts. Everyone was really worried that they were going to lose their internet privacy. And then all of a sudden, everybody started using VPNs. So the technology kind of outpaced the regulation when the regulation, or when the people in the community felt that the regulation had gone a little bit too far. So if the regulation, the general regulation in the crypto space, does get too harsh in the minds of the general community, then the general community is going to start building technologies to get around that regulation, at least the unfair regulation that they don't particularly like in a general sense. And so I really think that the next set of technologies depend heavily on whether the general regulatory landscape gets more harsh or becomes more easy.
What if like the next trend is just like, like another ERC that people just end up degenning on? And all these things we talk about in terms of like furthering the Web3 space are just like, all right, well, let's just, throw it back to like, what do you call it? Degenning essentially on our favorite platforms. Um, and I feel like the space is so interesting in that manner. It's like we have these grand visions that I totally align with. But also like, I feel like in the forefront when people look at it from like a bird's eye view, it's like, oh, it's just a bunch of guys, um, throwing a bunch of throwing a bunch of money they can't afford to lose, I guess, in protocols that you may, be risky or otherwise. Just an
Yeah,
interesting thought.
well, I think that there's always going to be something to degen on in the crypto space. I mean, even really in the early days, like 2012, 2013, there were, all these shit tokens that were, doing tiny changes to the Bitcoin protocol and then, talking on Bitcoin Talk about how their, new coin was the Bitcoin killer and that kind of thing. And then, in 2016, we started to see, some Ethereum killers, things like EOS and all of those smart contract style chains that everyone was getting very hyped about. Then we had the ICO boom, and then we had DeFi summer where people were building dexes. Um, you know, everything swap, Uniswap, Sushi Swap, everything swap came out, and then we had the NFT trend where there was the Bored Apes, there was Cool Cats, lots of random PFP style collections. So there's definitely going to be something. I'm not sure what that will be in the next year or two, but there's definitely always going to be a demand for people, aping in onto these like hyper spicy, exotic ways to make money. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the next trend for that particular side of crypto is going to be.
Shout outs to the apes. I'm here for both. So yeah, as I'm sure you guys are as well.
Yeah, it's all part of the fun.
Barney, you missed the most important one, which was the Dogecoin hype as well, all the Shiba Inus and baby
Of
Shibas.
course.
Classic stuff. All right. I think we can throw it to those in the audience. I think I actually already see someone with their hand up here. Let me see if I can add them up. All right, Geji, you have the floor. Give you a couple seconds just in case. Might have had their hand raised already. Maybe AFK. And there you go. They think they're AFK. That's fine. I think just in case, uh, to be cognizant of time, and because I think that's all for the hand raises. I saw some people kind of raise their hand and put them back down. Um, for those who maybe too shy to raise their hand and do want to join the Umbria ecosystem or maybe even contribute in any way, how would you guys recommend them going ahead and doing that?
Yeah, the best way to get in contact with the community at Umbria would be to check out the Discord, the Umbria Discord, and we can leave a link to that in the chat at the end. Beyond that, you can also find it if you go to umbria.network, and then there's a link at the bottom, which is like a Discord icon. You can click that, and then you can join Discord. And we're always happy to chat about the ecosystem. And if you have any suggestions or want to build something with us or anything like that, we're more than happy to chat with you on the Umbria Discord. So that's umbria.network. That's the URL. And then at the bottom of the page, there'll be all the links to socials, and Discord is the best place to chat with us.
All right, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys for coming on today. Always a great time to speak with builders in the space, especially about kind of like bridges and cross chain stuff. Frankly, in my opinion, it's some of the most interesting and innovative stuff in the industry right now. So really appreciate you guys for building and coming to Arbitrum.
Neil, thank you very much for having us. It's been a great chat, and we're really enjoying having Arbitrum on our bridge. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who came to listen to the chat. It was a really good chat.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Have a good one. GM.